The first time Yuki heard the crying, it was barely past midnight. She had just moved into a modest apartment on the outskirts of Tokyo, nestled near an old, disused train station where the tracks had long since rusted into silence. The rent was cheap, the neighborhood quiet, almost too quiet, and the landlord had given no real explanation for the frequent vacancies in the building. Yuki didn't care. She was a literature student with a tight budget and a fondness for solitude. But that night, while working on an essay in her dimly lit room, Yuki froze. Outside, past the rusted balcony rails and across the narrow alley came a sound, a soft, high-pitched sobbing. It wasn't the crying of a child or the coarse rasp of an adult. It was distant yet piercing, as if someone were weeping into a glass box, the sound echoing oddly as it rose and fell. A mechanical sort of sadness. At first, she thought it was a cat, or maybe a prank. But when she turned off her desk lamp and leaned toward the open window, heart pounding with inexplicable fear, she heard it more clearly. It was coming from the abandoned train station, specifically from the vending machine near the rust-streaked platform wall. She could just make it out from her window. The machine looked like any other, rectangular, glowing faintly in the dark, its flickering panel illuminating the wet concrete around it. But there was something off. It stood alone like a forgotten monument surrounded by nothing but silence and shadows. And it was weeping. Yuki stepped back from the window, closed it, and locked it tight. The next morning, she mentioned the sound to her neighbor, a stooped woman in her 70s named Mrs. Kubo. "Oh dear," Mrs. Kubo muttered, eyes narrowing. "You heard it too?" Yuki blinked. "The crying, last night." Mrs. Kubo leaned in close, voice low. "That's not a sound you follow, girl. People who go near that machine at night don't always come back right." Yuki half laughed. "You're joking." Mrs. Kubo didn't smile. "That thing's cursed. Been there longer than I've lived in this building. They say it used to stand in a hospital that burned down. A woman died. And ever since, on certain nights, it weeps. It calls." "Calls who?" Mrs. Kubo stared at her. "Anyone who's lonely." That night, Yuki couldn't sleep. She tried to brush it off, blaming her imagination and the old woman's spooky tale. She made tea, reread her class notes, and buried herself in work. But as the clock crawled past 2:57 a.m., the air in her apartment seemed to thicken. Then came the sound again, a slow, sorrowful whimper, drifting on the wind like a melody only she could hear. Yuki found herself standing by the window before she realized she'd moved. The vending machine glowed faintly in the dark. The crying was louder now, as if someone were crouched beside it, sobbing into their hands. Yuki felt an odd compulsion, an invisible pull, almost maternal, that beckoned her like a child calling for help. "No," she whispered to herself, "it's just a machine." And yet, she grabbed her coat. The walk to the station felt longer than it should have. Every step echoed louder than the last. Her sneakers scuffed the concrete as she approached the platform. The crying didn't stop. It became clearer, less muffled, like someone was trapped inside the machine, begging for release. Yuki stopped a few feet away, heart hammering. Now she could see it up close. The vending machine was coated in grime, its edges stained dark with rust and age. Its buttons blinked lazily, the panel covered in scratch marks and faint fingerprints. But the drinks inside looked untouched. Rows of colorful cans perfectly aligned behind a layer of dusty plastic. Then, without warning, the sobbing stopped. Complete silence. Yuki's breath caught. The vending machine buzzed softly and then lit up. A red message scrolled across its display. "Don't leave me alone." Yuki took a step back. The panel flickered again. "Stay with me." And then the sobbing resumed, louder now, right in her ear. Yuki screamed and turned, but no one was behind her. When she looked back, a single can had dropped into the dispenser tray with a loud clunk. She didn't put in any money. The can had no label, no brand, just a cold silver shell. She stared at it, frozen, unsure if touching it would summon something unspeakable. Then came the whisper, right behind her ear, as if someone was pressing their mouth to her neck. "Drink and remember." Yuki fled. Back in her apartment, she locked every door, shut every window, and hid the can in a drawer under her socks. She didn't sleep that night and the one after. But the dreams began. The woman in white, the blood, the infant's cry. And every night, the machine kept crying, as if waiting. The next day, Yuki couldn't concentrate in class. The machine's words kept echoing in her mind. "Don't leave me alone. Stay with me. Drink and remember." She tried to tell herself it was sleep deprivation or a prank, but no matter how much she tried to rationalize it, the memory felt too real, too deliberate to be dismissed. The can still sat in her drawer, cold and silent. She hadn't touched it again. That evening, driven by equal parts fear and curiosity, Yuki returned to Mrs. Kubo's apartment. The old woman opened the door with a knowing look, as if she had been expecting her. "You went to the machine, didn't you?" she said softly. Yuki hesitated. "I didn't mean to. I needed to see it." Mrs. Kubo sighed and motioned for her to come inside. Her apartment was cluttered with dusty porcelain dolls and faded paper charms taped to the walls, some with kanji written in red ink that looked disturbingly like dried blood. "You're not the first one," the old woman said, settling into a creaking chair. "But you might be the last if you're not careful." She reached for a thick photo album and pulled out a weathered newspaper clipping, yellow with age. "I saved this, just in case someone ever needed to know." Yuki leaned closer. It was an article from 1994, dated exactly July 13th. The headline read, "Local man vanishes after strange vending machine incident." A grainy photo showed a younger man in his 30s, serious-faced, holding a flashlight in front of what looked like the same vending machine. The caption read, "Takeda Shunichi, last seen entering the abandoned grounds of Suda Memorial Hospital." Yuki's fingers trembled slightly. This vending machine used to be at a hospital? Mrs. Kubo nodded. The hospital burned down in the late 80s. They moved what was left to the train station area, including that damn machine. Said it was too heavy to dispose of. No one wanted to take responsibility for it. She opened a smaller envelope and pulled out a faded photograph. It showed Takeda standing in front of the vending machine, next to a concrete foundation, probably the remains of the old hospital site. Behind him, a charred building frame could be seen in the distance, half swallowed by overgrown weeds. Mrs. Kubo spoke again, her voice hoarse. Takeda was a reporter, thought the story about a haunted vending machine was urban legend crap, decided to investigate. He filmed everything. Yuki's eyes widened. "Do you have the footage?" Mrs. Kubo gave a slow, reluctant nod. "It's on VHS. I never threw it out." An hour later, Yuki sat cross-legged on Mrs. Kubo's tatami floor, watching static ripple across an old television set. The screen flickered and then the footage began. The camera was shaky, handheld. Takeda's voice came through, calm, professional. June 28, 1994. Investigating rumors of an abandoned vending machine that supposedly cries at night. Locals claim it's cursed. I'll be spending the night here. The footage showed him placing a small sleeping mat beside the vending machine. The surrounding area was empty. Nothing but concrete, vines, and shadow. He turned the camera toward the machine. Looks old. No visible power source. But the lights are on. I haven't inserted any coins, but it's humming. The camera zoomed in on the buttons. Each one bore a different drink name. Coca-Cola, Calpis, Fanta. But some were smudged out. The letters melted as if scorched. Then, around 2:47 a.m., the sound began. Faint at first. A low, steady keening, almost like wind moving through broken glass. Then it intensified. Soft sobs rising into choked wails. Takeda's voice, now uncertain. There's no one here, but it sounds like crying, like it's coming from inside the machine. Yuki's stomach turned as the footage jumped forward. Static, a buzz, then a jarring image. The machine had dispensed a can, just like what she'd received. The label was missing. A handwritten message was scrawled in black marker. "She's still inside." Takeda's hands trembled as he picked it up. "What the hell?" And then, a woman's voice, crackling through the machine's speaker. "Don't leave me. Please, take my baby." The camera jolted. Takeda gasped, stumbling backward. The machine was weeping now. Real tears, it seemed, pouring from the coin slot and dripping down the side like blood. The camera tumbled to the ground, showing only Takeda's legs as he screamed. A shape emerged in the reflection of the vending machine's glass. Blurry and pale, a woman, long black hair, a hospital gown soaked in red. Her arms cradled something, a bundle wrapped in a filthy cloth. The screen turned black. Yuki sat in silence, frozen, her mouth dry. "What happened to him?" she whispered. Mrs. Kubo closed the VHS case. They found his wallet and camera bag at the train station. But not him, not a trace, no body, no blood, nothing. "He just vanished?" Mrs. Kubo looked her dead in the eyes. He was taken, like the others. Back in her apartment, Yuki retrieved the can from her drawer. It was colder than she remembered. She stared at it, the label-less metal glinting under her desk lamp. Her reflection stared back from the curved surface, wide-eyed, trembling. "She's still inside," Yuki murmured. Something deep inside her whispered, "Open it." She almost did, but something stopped her. Not fear, but the feeling that to open it would be to accept something, to invite it in. Instead, she placed the can in a plastic bag and tucked it behind her bookshelf, burying it beneath textbooks and old clothes. Still that night she dreamed. She was standing in a dim hospital corridor, walls stained yellow with mold. The smell of antiseptic and something metallic hung heavy in the air. Down the hallway, a woman in white was crying, soft, repetitive sobs. Yuki tried to move, but her limbs felt like lead. Her mouth opened, but no sound came. Then the woman turned around. Her eyes were missing, black pits of endless sorrow. In her arms, she held a bundle. Something squirmed beneath the cloth. "Take her," the woman whispered. "She's yours now." Yuki screamed herself awake. It was 3:11 a.m. The vending machine was crying again, and this time it sounded closer. After the nightmare, Yuki didn't sleep for days. Every sound in the night felt like a whisper. Every metallic click reminded her of the vending machine's cry. She considered throwing the can into the river, but something told her it would find its way back. Instead, she began digging. She skipped lectures and spent her afternoons in the university library combing through old records, blogs, and news articles. Most of it was vague. Urban legend forums, ghost hunting blogs, and grainy YouTube clips that seemed like cheap hoaxes. But one post stood out. 2007 challenge video gone wrong, deleted from all platforms. I still have a copy. It was on a long-dead blog called Tokyo Under, a hotspot for creepy videos and paranormal rumors. The post linked to a now-defunct email and a Google Drive that no longer existed. Yuki managed to find a Wayback Machine snapshot from 2009. The username attached to the post was Akai Neko 7. She searched everywhere, Reddit, Discord, even deep web forums. Finally, through a horror memorabilia Facebook group, she found someone in Hokkaido who had saved a copy of the challenge video. Yuki wired them 8,000 yen. A day later, a file arrived in her inbox. Eco, Vending, unedited.mkv. Yuki watched it with the lights on. Still, goosebumps bloomed along her arms as the footage began. The camera quality was grainy, but it was clearly shot on a handheld camcorder. The date in the corner read, July 14th, 2007. A group of 4 teens stood in front of the same vending machine, laughing and posing. One girl stood out, short pink hair, school uniform skirt, oversized black hoodie. She was holding a bottle of sake and waving it like a trophy. "Aiko here," she shouted, "and welcome to the Crying Machine Midnight Challenge." The camera panned to the vending machine. It looked slightly different, less decayed, but the cracked buttons and flickering light were unmistakable. "Rules are simple," Aiko said. "Insert a coin, wait until it cries, and drink whatever comes out. If you scream, you lose." Laughter, applause, teenage bravado. They waited. The camera cut and returned at 3:02 a.m. A low, wet sob echoed. The group went quiet. Aiko stepped forward and inserted a coin. Clunk. The machine spat out a can with no label. The others oohed and laughed nervously. "Drink, drink, drink." Aiko opened it, sniffed. "Smells like blood?" She laughed. "Ugh, this is so fake." She took a sip. The cheering stopped. Aiko blinked. Her smile wavered. "What is this?" She dropped the can. Her mouth hung open. Blood began to leak from her nose, then her eyes, then her ears. She screamed. But the scream wasn't normal. It was distorted, like it came from underwater. The camera shook violently. The other teens ran. One tripped and dropped the camera. It landed sideways, showing only the vending machine. And then from the corner of the screen, movement. A figure crawling out of the machine's dispensing hole. Too large to fit, yet emerging anyway. Skin like paper, hair like black string, a jaw unhinged like a broken puppet. It slithered toward Aiko. She tried to run. The figure reached her. The screen exploded in static. Yuki paused the video. Her hands were ice. She rewound and watched the moment the entity emerged again and again. Each time her stomach twisted. She opened a search engine and typed Aiko 2007 vending machine death Tokyo. No results. She searched the names in the blog post's comments. Nothing. It was like they had been erased or taken. Yuki couldn't sleep. She couldn't eat. Every sound felt amplified. Every shadow stretched too long. She reached out to Mrs. Kubo again, sending her a text. There's a video from 2007, a girl named Aiko. It happened again. No response, she called, straight to voicemail. That night, around 2:50 a.m., Yuki heard crying outside her window. She lived on the 6th floor. Terrified, she crept to the window and peeked through the blinds. Nothing, except a vending machine stood at the edge of the street below. The same one, rusted, flickering, a red can waiting in its tray, waiting for her. Yuki knew she couldn't run forever. She went to the university psychology department the next day and asked about hallucinations, shared dreams, and mass hysteria. Most professors dismissed her concerns, except one, Professor Ichiro Tanabe, a quiet man in his late 50s who specialized in Japanese folklore and memory manipulation. She told him everything. Instead of laughing, he asked a single question. Have you drunk from the can? Yuki froze. Number I haven't. Professor Tanabe nodded solemnly. Good, because if you do, your memories are no longer yours. She leaned forward. What do you mean? He walked to a shelf, pulled out a book bound in hand-stitched cloth, and opened to a marked page. It showed an illustration from Edo-era Japan, a box-shaped shrine where villagers offered coins to speak with the dead. The spirits would answer through whispers or tears. They called it the Namida Bako, the box of tears. It was sealed after 3 children vanished. He looked Yuki dead in the eyes. Your vending machine is a modern version, but the spirit inside is not the same. Yuki whispered, then who is she? Professor Tanabe hesitated, then said, there's a legend about a nurse who worked in a private hospital in the 1980s. Pregnant, abused, she tried to protect her patients from experimental procedures. One night, during a fire, she locked herself in the break room vending machine closet, holding her baby. Yuki's heart stopped. They never found her body, he continued, but they found blood and a charred doll. He handed her a note scribbled in pencil. She feeds on grief. She gives you visions, but they aren't yours, they're hers. Later that night, Yuki returned to her apartment and pulled out the can. She placed it on the floor, sat across from it, and whispered, what do you want from me? Silence. Then the metal groaned. The can vibrated, and from within, a voice, not mechanical, not human. Find my baby, then, or become her. She stared at the can until dawn. It didn't move again, but something in her had shifted. A terrible burden now sat on her chest, like the grief wasn't just hers anymore. She returned to Professor Tanabe that morning, gripping the can in her backpack like a bomb. Professor, she said, eyes bloodshot. Who was she? He closed the blinds in his office and motioned her to sit. Her name was probably erased from public records, but there's an unofficial name passed through rumor and archived psychiatric logs. Nurse Kiyomi. Yuki repeated the name under her breath. Kiyomi? Tanabe pulled a file folder from a locked drawer and placed it on the table. The cover was stamped, Confidential, Toyama Private Sanatorium, 1983. These were smuggled out before the facility burned down, he explained. Very few know about them. Most who do disappear. Yuki flipped through the papers. Black and white photos, crumbling walls, rusted gurneys, a vending machine in a break room, and reports. Patient in room 6. D reported screaming coming from behind the vending machine at 3:12 a.m. No source found. Nurse Kiyomi Nakamura, last seen the night of the fire. Room smelled of burning cloth. Machine found overturned. 5 infants unaccounted for. No remains. Yuki's blood ran cold. She was pregnant, Tanabe said. The child died with her or disappeared. Either way, something attached itself to her grief and pain. When the machine was moved off-site after the fire, it was resold and installed at a different location. You know where. The one outside my dorm. Tanabe nodded grimly. Why a vending machine? She asked. Because it dispenses, he whispered. It gives, like a mother. But now, it gives back grief. Yuki knew what she had to do. She needed to go to the ruins of Toyama Sanatorium. The location wasn't marked on Google Maps anymore. The land had been bought by a development company but never rebuilt. Locals called it cursed. Yuki took a train to the nearest town, then walked 6 kilometers through fog-choked hills until she found it, a concrete skeleton. The sanatorium's walls stood like rotting teeth. The smell of mildew and ash lingered even after decades. Windows shattered. Ivy devoured the walls. She stepped inside. It was deathly quiet. Only the crunch of her boots and the occasional drop of water echoed in the void. Yuki used her phone as a flashlight. She passed crumbled examination rooms, rusting sinks, scorched walls. Then she found it, the burn ward. Charred stretchers, melted light fixtures, and in the center, the remains of a break room, a square impression on the floor where the vending machine once stood. Yuki stepped closer. Suddenly, her phone flickered, then died. Darkness swallowed everything. She held her breath. Then came a sound, wet and metallic. Clink, 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 the sound of coins being inserted, and then a cry, low, wailing, coming from the walls. Yuki screamed and backed away, tripping over debris. Her hand landed on something cold, a doll's head, half melted. She looked up and saw a shadow standing where the machine had once been. Female, hair hanging like wet rope, eyes hollow, a bundle in her arms, dripping red. Yuki couldn't move. The figure raised the bundle, and the baby's face had no features, just a blank, smooth mask. You let them take him. The voice was like wind through broken glass. They took everything from me. Now you will feel it too. Yuki ran through the hallway, down the stairs, past the scorched names of patients and nurses now long forgotten. Behind her, the crying grew louder, deeper, like it was coming from inside her skull. She burst through the entrance and collapsed outside, gasping for breath. When she looked back, the building was silent again, empty, but the grief lingered. Yuki returned to her apartment exhausted, haunted. She opened the can again, the same one. It had never spilled, never rotted, still cold. Inside, she found a tooth, tiny, infant-sized. She dropped it, shaking. Suddenly, her laptop screen flickered on. No hands touched it. A new video began to play. Grainy footage of a hospital nursery, nurses, cribs, babies wrapped in blue and pink. Then, a figure in a black hoodie, Aiko, the girl from the 2007 video. She wasn't dead. She was older, eyes sunken, face pale. She stood in front of the vending machine, breathing heavily. She gave me back his memories, she whispered to the camera, but they're not mine. I see the fire, I smell the blood. I hear his crying every night. If you're watching this, she's chosen you next." The screen went black. Yuki fell to her knees. Now she understood. The machine wasn't just a curse, it was a grave, a monument to grief that had nowhere else to go, and it needed witnesses, carriers, so it cried. Until someone listened. The wind screamed that night. It tore through the trees outside the dorm like something feral. The sky above was black, no stars, no moon, only churning clouds, as if something ancient had risen from the earth and blotted out the heavens. Yuki waited. Her hands trembled as she wrapped the bundle in pale linen. It felt heavier than it should, as if the fabric had absorbed something. Grief, maybe, or fear. On her desk, the can of juice from the machine rattled. Even though the room was still, the duct tape bulged outward as if something inside was trying to get out. She clutched the bundle tightly and stepped out into the night. 3 a.m. The dorm grounds were abandoned. No lights, no voices, only the distant hum of cicadas. Then even that went silent. Yuki's breath fogged in the air. It was freezing. She approached the vending machine. It stood taller than usual. Or maybe it was the way the shadows moved around it, like they were drawn to it. It pulsed faintly. Each light blinked out of rhythm, like a heartbeat that had long since decayed. She placed the bundle gently in front of it, then pressed record on the old cassette recorder she brought. "I know you're listening," she whispered. Silence. She continued. "They called you Nurse Kiyomi. You lost your child, burned alive, erased from records, forgotten." The machine rumbled, not the usual mechanical whir, a deep, gurgling sound like something wet and ancient twisting inside. "You were a mother," she said, "and you were denied your final moment." She slowly unwrapped the cloth. Inside, a hand-sewn doll, its eyes stitched shut, tiny fingers made from silk thread, a symbol not of mockery but mourning. "I give him back to you." Suddenly, clang, all the lights on the vending machine went out, then flashed red. Clang, clang, clang. The buttons began pressing themselves, randomly, violently, like someone was punching them from the inside. Thud. Something slammed against the glass. Yuki staggered back. The fog on the glass thickened. Then a handprint formed, small, childlike, then another, bloody. The doll shuddered on the ground, as if something invisible had touched it. Yuki gasped. From inside the machine came the unmistakable sound of a baby crying, but twisted, slowed down, warped as though filtered through rotting lungs. Then a woman's voice, low. "Where is he?" The crying stopped. The vending machine slot opened, and a charred baby bottle rolled out. The smell hit Yuki instantly. Burnt milk, hair, and flesh. She screamed and stumbled backward, knocking over the recorder. When she picked it up, it was still running, but the tape had unwound itself, spelling out the word "daughter." The machine groaned, louder now. Metal bent inward as if it were being crushed from the inside. The front glass cracked. A face pressed against it, not a human face. Hollow sockets, a mouth stitched shut, and hair floating like it was underwater. Behind the face, dozens of others, infants, nurses, patients, all pressed against the inside of the machine like flies caught in amber, screaming silently. Yuki fell to her knees. "I'm not her," she cried. "I'm not your daughter." But the glass split with a shriek, and a single blackened arm reached out, clawed fingers. It grabbed the doll, and slowly dragged it inside, then stopped, held the doll for a long moment, and pulled it close. The machine powered down. Everything went dark. Yuki sat there, frozen. Her heart beat like a war drum. Her ears rang. The wind died. Silence. Then, the vending machine released one final item. It slid from the slot without a sound. Yuki reached for it with trembling fingers, a hospital wristband. She read the name, Kiyomi Nakamura, infant ID, Ren Nakamura, date March 3rd, 1983. Yuki looked up. The handprint on the glass slowly faded. The lights flickered once, then turned off, permanently. The next morning, the machine was gone. Not destroyed, not dismantled, just erased. Even the cement where it had stood had no marks, no bolts, no scratches, just blank space. Yuki never found the wristband again, and the tape from her recorder melted, but she remembered every night, every dream. She remembered holding the doll, hearing the crying, watching grief feed on silence. Years later, a new rumor began to circulate. A woman in Osaka, pregnant, vanished after stopping at a rural train station vending machine. Only thing left behind, a charred pacifier. They say the crying has stopped, that the curse has ended. But grief doesn't vanish. It waits. It hides in forgotten corners, in places no one looks, in machines we trust too much, in shadows that move when they shouldn't. And if you ever walk alone past a vending machine at 3 a.m., if you hear a faint sound like a child sobbing or a mother whispering behind glass, don't stop and don't look it.